The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Aiken, and I'm here subbing for Michael Cervais, who's the Executive Director of the International Society of Chief Data Officers. I want to welcome you to the next in our series, How CDOs Succeed, which sounds pretty practical and focused. So I like the whole approach to that. I want to just chat briefly about the society and then introduce you to our speaker today here and let him have the full attention that he deserves on this. So the CDO Society, the International Society of Chief Data Officers, is a society for data leaders by data leaders. There's a lot of other places and choices that you can go to invest money. Some of them cost tens of thousands of dollars. Others offer you lots of opportunity for lots of exposure. We're here to actually create a body of knowledge and to put real research to the metal in that sense. So we were created out of the MIT CDO Forum, which is an annual event each year. And if you aren't aware, there's a virtual option to get to in terms of joining. So we'd certainly love to see you there. There's a lot of other resources and things at our website. We'll let you take a look. But again, I'll mainly focus here on our friend and colleague, John Ladley. John, it's so good to have you here. We're real pleased to be able to kick this off with you. Yeah, so John and I have known each other for a long time, but John is a real data management thought leader with lots and lots of experience. He's a former analyst, if you guys know what those particular terms are, and has been quite widely recognized for bringing a lot of foresight and expertise to topics. And he's turned his attention now to the topic of data literacy. And we'll get to that in just a second, John, but I also want to mention your book, and mainly to give everybody a state of the perspective here. John wrote the first version of this book, version 1, and then he was asked to do it again. And the new book is longer. That's interesting. Certainly you could imagine the subject has expanded, but he said virtually everything about the subject had changed in 10 years. And so now this is a very good resource to take a look at. And it also speaks to the amount of change that we're going through around these topics, areas that we can start to get here. So the focus today obviously is on data acumen, but if you say acumen, most people don't understand it. So we always write the word literacy just there so we can hit the search engines, which is very cynical, isn't it, John?
I'm not cynical. My glass is always half empty.
There you go, exactly.
I'm sorry, half full.
Absolutely. Well, John, let's turn it over to you and sort of hear what your thoughts are around this topic. On this again, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, I'm sure everybody is now completely curious about why you're sitting in a fighter plane up there, right?
Well, not a fighter plane, but that is my my hobby. I restored that airplane, and it's an 80-year-old World War II trainer. Email me for more details. Peter knows, don't get me started on airplanes. Can you folks see the screen?
Yes, John, we can. Yep.
Okay, great.
Great.
So we're going to say, okay, so there's a new word here. Everyone's talking about data literacy. And as Peter said, with my second edition of my governance book, it was almost a 95% rewrite of words because things have changed. And one thing I've learned in this business is we need to adapt, we need to change, we need to be open-minded. And in this field of literacy, because literacy is the big buzzword of the year, there are more companies now offering literacy training than you can swing a cat at. And a year ago, there was only a handful. So this is the big thing, and everyone's on top. And by the way, it's a really good reason. I am not disparaging anything that's going on right now. However, this is an adaptation to what we've been saying, and we're missing an opportunity. And the better word, you'll find that by the end of this presentation, I think is acumen. All right. So I'm going to cover why I think literacy is inadequate. I'm going to talk about why this is an important topic. It is not just a philosophical thing because there's too many nuts and bolts issues associated with this. There is too much adaptation data people have to do, and other technology people and regular business people have to do around this subject. This whole thing of literacy, etc., is an evolutionary sign. It's a bellwether step in our industry and a maturity of the data realm, but we've got to be a little bit light on our feet. So I'm going to talk about what to do. First of all, Go out on the interweb. You can see all these definitions of data literacy. I want you to just pick up a couple of keywords from here. I am not going to read these. It's about reading stuff, like reading text, like literacy of reading, being able to read and write. Okay, it's all associated with those definitions, which is perfectly fine. All right, and these definitions are everywhere. All kind of companies have them. Organizations that do analysis have them, the consulting firms have them, blah, 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 all the gurus have them, all this kind of stuff. They all are falling short. All right, these are all biased towards the consumption side of data. Reading, understanding, communicating with data, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine, all right? However, the problems come in the rest of the data supply chain, folks. All right. I was talking to Peter the other day while we were preparing this, and I said there is a huge similarity between what we're seeing now, AI, machine learning, etc., this push for literacy, and something that happened in the 90s, which was around data warehouse and data marts. And a bunch of people said, you can do a data mart in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever. And everyone said, yay. No one looked at the rest of the data supply chain. This is a very, very similar thing, right? We engage with our data, we operate with our data, we manage our organizations with our data, all right, and we improve with data, and the whole literacy focuses on the improvement part. We've ignored 80% of the issue, okay? All organizations have a data supply chain, whether you're going to be digital or not, all right, you have a data supply chain. You are trying to coordinate old stuff and new stuff, architecture and technology, culture change and people's behaviors, app dev, DevOps, op this, op that, okay? All of that's trying to be coordinated. If you're a CIO or a CDO on this call, there you are besieged by this alphabet soup, but it all sits in one thing that we totally ignore: data supply chain or a data logistics change or whatever, all right? When you look at all the inputs and outputs in a modern organization, it is no different than a complex a manufacturing company, a complex service company. Set aside all the abstract intrusion like behaviors of data and stuff. We are dealing with complex supply chains with much higher velocities, much higher quantities, all right? But that's what we're dealing with. And the literacy thing and the emphasis on this is good, but it falls short, right? So I like to use the term data acumen, all right? And that briefly is everyone thinks about data when they're doing their job. And you go, well, everyone does. Well, no, I'm gonna have a problem with you saying that. Okay, because if I take a look at the typical development team, whether you're agile or waterfall or it's DevOps or whatever like that, it's like, here comes a thing, here's our release, here's our scrum, here's our sprint, whatever. We throw something up, we go, that's great, that's what we want, feature functionality, great. Now, where are we going to get the data for this? And we're now 2, 3, 4 steps down the road. Still happening all the time, right? No, you need the data person up front. We need to be thinking about, what are we going to do with our data? All right. I'm going to mention data products here in a little bit. There's a big push now on data as a product being handled the same way, with the same product owner philosophy that we, handle things with other software products. And of course, the data mesh, data fabric world say you got to have it data product, and we'll get to that in a bit. But everyone thinks about data. So how is it managed? How is it used? And the communicate part, which I said, I'm not disparaging that. We got to do that. All right. Okay. And are you thinking about the risks? Are you thinking about the ramifications along the way? Not just used, but managed. So when someone says, I'm going to use some data to do an artificial intelligence model or a machine learning model, is someone thinking right away, how has it been treated before it got to us? What has it been, how has it been curated? What is the pedigree of this data, all right? When you hear literacy, I'd like you to switch gears immediately and think competency or acumen. If you don't like acumen, the word competency fits in there too. And in that sense, and maybe this is the controversial part of my talk, I'm hoping my talk has some eye-opening tidbits in it today. And I think hopefully this is the start of those here. I don't see truly literate or true acumen in organizations anywhere. And I mean data people, I mean DevOps people, I mean app dev people, I mean executives, middle management, and all the regular folks in between. There are very few organizations that have any level of acumen required to deal with what we're dealing with in this modern world and dealing with data. All right. First of all organizations have a data strategy. It's usually informal and not useful, or they're trying to do a data strategy and struggling with it because it's hard to communicate that with leadership, because leadership doesn't really know what a data strategy is. By the way, my definition, it is the chapter called data inside your business strategy. It is not a separate strategy. All right. So for those of you being CDOs who are begging and pleading to do a data strategy as a CDO, I have great empathy for you, but that's where I advise people to go with that. Your technologists, they, A implies B, B implies C, C implies D, commutative principle. All right, that's great. Company needs to do something with customers. Company needs MDM. Company needs data quality to do MDM. Well, to do it data quality, we need some data governance. A implies C. All right, and then to do data governance, we need a data catalog. What we have here is we got data problems. Let's go buy a data catalog. That's not a logical argument. All right. That means to me illiterate. That means to me lack of acumen. All right. Technologists still, to this day, I don't know why. Please, someone help me understand this. Why, when you get an audience with the leadership team, when you get an audience with the board, we have begged for years to get buy-in, and buy-in's not the right word, it's engagement, but we finally get engagement because the business people are expecting us to do stuff with data. They want us to, we have full buy-in. Buy-in's kind of, it's a sidebar, but buy-in's kind of a silly question. I can't get, you've got your buy-in. The fact that you're on this conference, the fact that your job exists means you've got buy-in, all right? But you have their engagement, all right? But when you do get that engagement, the first thing we do is lay down the acronyms and all this kind of stuff. And folks, what we do can be explained in simpler terms, okay? It can be done, all right? Then the training, I already talked about this. There's a lot of data literacy training right now, but remember, it might be the best data literacy training you can buy. It might be wonderful training, but it might miss 80% of your particular problem. All right. So data acumen is having all of that in your mind at the same time. Now, and this is really important. By the way, just as a quick note here, I'm going to leave a lot of time for questions here. Okay. This is a good topic to talk about. I hope I stir a few questions up here with this. So we were going to have time for questions. So don't feel like this is going to be, listen, and then go. Then you're going to be pinched for asking questions. We have time for the questions. So why?
John, maybe I might just interrupt and let people know that they can post their questions in the right-hand side of the little browser app that pops up. So don't forget to ask your questions in there, and then we will read them out as well. So,
yeah, yes, yeah. Thank you. That's a good reminder because we're all used to Zoom and Teams, and I popped on to GoToMeeting this morning. It's kind of like it was kind of like going home, really, Robert. It was really nice.
It's anyway. It's a legacy app.
yeah. I'm looking for my COBOL coding pad. Anyway, okay, so why is this important? Well, again, we want data conversations to be business as usual, okay? The reason, and there's a reason we want this. First, I want to do AI. We think we should do machine learning. We've got analytics and all of that, and you need the literacy for that. But when you look at the track record for AI, machine learning, analytics, and you look at, it's a declining failure rate. But as recently as 2 years ago, we were still in the 80% AI stuff wasn't working up to expectations. Now that's improved slightly in the last couple of years. But when you look at that, you're still looking at that consumption end. And when you look at the challenges, all the challenges are in the rest of the data supply chain. So it's important to think of that. I've done several conferences in the last few years where there have been data science people attending, and they have come into the data profession from statistics. They have a master's degree in math and statistics or something like that. And in between the conference sessions or at the end, you know, when the shy people come up and ask me questions as I'm packing my stuff up, they go, hey, do you ever run into places that the data quality isn't very good? Because we're having data quality issue and none of us understand how our data could possibly have become this bad. And first time I heard it, I was very amused. I'm sure some of you are amused about that too, but I hear it almost every time I speak now. So that's really important, all right? You've got people out there you're paying a lot of money to that don't understand the data supply chain, data science, well paid, well educated. They don't have acumen, they're illiterate from that particular context, okay? Compliance, you don't have to interpret this one. Every time you turn around, something else is happening in terms of compliance, in terms of PII. I still run into, I know it's in the news and people say, well, I have a CISO, I have a this, I have a that. Well, just the other day, I was talking to an organization and they put something up on the wall to demonstrate a data issue, and they used a real live customer record, all right, with real PII on it. And when I said, do you really want to put that up there? They said, well, everyone in the room has taken data training. And I was like, does that mean you should put it up there? Okay. That to me is a lack of understanding data in our modern world, okay? And it's across the board. Ethics. Yes, you can do it. Should you do it? Yes, it's legal. Should you do it anyway? Data ethics is a huge issue right now. We're going to find out kind of why here in a minute. Competition. You compete across your entire supply chain in your organization, whether you're government, NGO, nonprofit, for-profit, you have a supply chain of a sort in your organization. And you don't always compete on just the final product. Sometimes your competition is based on your service after the sale. Sometimes you compete based on your sales process. You compete based on your reputation, and data can tank all of those while you're perfectly issuing products out the back door at the lowest possible cost alongside a perfect regular material supply chain. All right, so competition of your data supply chain is just as important as your material supply chain. Data debt and data quality, we talk about these all the time. These are real problems with enormously significant costs. And even though data debt management, data quality management are slam dunk benefits with measurable dollar value, I don't see enough of that, okay? Next is anthropology. Data, there's a bunch of books that came out in the last 5 years, the fifth industrial revolution, things like that. Data is now anthropological. Anthropology, if you're not really sure, is the study of how human beings be human beings. And data has changed that. If you don't think data's changed that, I want you to lock your cell phone in a drawer and not touch it for 2 days. And then come back and tell me if data hasn't affected your life, okay? Data has changed the way we do things, and it is as significant to the psychology and psyche of human behavior as the Industrial Revolution was, as the development of the printing press was, as the movement from hunter-gatherers to agricultural was for human beings. It is that important. Now, I will find intellectuals to argue with me on that. In fact, I'm working on a book, I think, to talk about this right now. However, I do believe firmly we are in an anthropological situation here, which requires total view of everything, not just the fact that the CEO can read your data visualization stuff, all right? In fact, it's kind of trivial, folks, okay? Acumen and literacy, as I said before, it's not limited to just the decision makers. It's not limited to just the leaders. Everyone in your organization needs to have some better acumen with data, some better idea of what's going on. Someone said, does that mean my custodial staff, the people that empty the waste baskets? Yeah, I go, yes. And I said, well, you're going to have to give me an example for that. And I went, easy. I mean, I didn't even hesitate. I said, someone's been emptying waste baskets for 10 years, same waste baskets. One night, the waste baskets are full of shredded paper that's never been there before. Do you think someone needs to know that or not? Think about that, okay? We have to be more truthful with leadership. We've got to deliver them some good news. We have got to deliver them some bad news, all right? Some good news. You can read any article in trade press or new, and those articles love to talk about every minute we create a gazillion terabytes. Every day we create a gazillion exabytes, all right? There's 75 zettabytes. I read that somewhere a few years ago floating around. I don't think that's important. That's a plumbing issue, all right? I mean, there's trillions and trillions of stars in the universe. We can't get to any of them, so what do you worry about, all right? 75 zettabytes of data. You don't need to look at that. What are you worried about it for? That, to me, that is, there's just Madam CEO, relax. Not a big deal, all right? Oh, data's weird. Data, you know, we read a data, it's still on the shelf. If data's an asset, we're not decrementing inventory. You know, we want to put data on the balance sheet, and we can't because the AICPA, their head explodes, all this kind of stuff. Forget all that stuff. That's relevant to architects. It might be relevant to Wall Street someday or something like that. But right now, leadership wants to make more money, lower costs, get more customers, fulfill the mission, manage the budget's been allocated to them, or service their community if they're a non-for-profit, okay? And that has not changed, and that's what we've got to focus on. I still get challenged these days when I meet with a leadership team for the first time and I go in, and as Peter said in my bio, I work a lot with executives now. I don't do, I'm a single person operation now, semi-retired. I work with leadership, more one-on-one mentoring, coaching, things like that, right? And I still get into the situation where someone will get on their elbows, lean across the table and say, John, quit talking about data. What this leadership team needs is information. Forget it. Just stop. All right. You know, information is data and stop. Someone else's data, it's a supply chain. Someone's data is someone else's information, is someone else's data, is the next person's information. It's too complicated. It's too tied together. How many angels fit on the head of a pin? Same discussion, all right? Stop. 98% of what you do with what we call data and what we define as information in terms of governance, oversight, management, all that, it's the same stuff, all right? So don't let your leadership team get all messed up about that. Just say relax, all right? Relax. That's not the problem right now, all right? CEO says, I got to be digital. How do I become digital? No, you don't have to be digital. You know, what does digital mean? Well, it depends on which book you're reading, it seems to me, all right? And then how many organizations are trying to be digital and they're into it and they really don't know what's different, all right? You can be a little or a lot or whatever. No one else has mastered asset treatment of data because we're going to talk about that in a little bit when we get to the prescriptive part, all right? I will say this, the good news is if we spend any time on data, now I've been working with some of my peers in the industry and talking about this, Doug Laney, Tom Redmond, people like that, and we're really confident that if you can just roll up your sleeves and look at any organization, we can scrounge up a lot of money, all right? That's the important part. We can use this stuff to scrounge up some money, either save it if you're a nonprofit or make it if you're for profit, all right? All right, data is now more, here's the good news. You know, app dev is, we're, you know, project's late. We're installing an ERP system that's going to be 20% over budget. All that stuff seems to be really important when you come to being a CIO and stuff like that. Data is more important than that now. All right, I think we can back off. I have this little phrase I use, stay away from the SLA. I think service level agreements are dinosaurs because you don't have service level agreements around data. And as long as you don't have them around data stuff, all they're doing is pushing you in the wrong direction. So Data is more important, all right? Some data is not strategic. So if the data architect's saying we have to put everything in the catalog, no, you don't. No, you don't. You know, do you have to have a data model that covers the entire organization? No, you don't. All right, I've had a lot of success in my career by not doing any data model, depending on the organization and things like that. Now, there's some bad news we have to share too, all right? Data management, as we've been doing this for a long time, has not met expectations. That's the definition of failure, all right? We've got too many things that haven't worked out the way we said they are going to do. We have lots of proof of concepts, but we don't have a beachhead. Tom Redmond and I talk about this a lot, and he mentioned, he says, we have a beachhead. It's like we're on the beach, we've landed, but we haven't moved inland, and we've been trying for 20 years to move inland. All right, and boss, we need some help. We need to get creative with that. That's why I was talking about at the beginning. We need to change the way we're thinking on some things here. Speaking of change likely, oh, we're going to be AI, we want machine learning. Well, there's a likely chance that a competitor with a sharp person out of college that can do a spreadsheet is going to beat you to death in the market while you're spending $10 million on AI analytics and data scientists. Okay, you've got to remember that. Investing in this stuff is no guarantee of success. You must execute, all right? You need to talk to your peers and stuff that you can't ask for 10 data fields anymore, and then we're going to give you some type of SLA thing where we're going to give you your 10 data fields and we'll call that self-service. That's baloney, because most of the time they don't know how to use those 10 fields. Most of the time you don't know the pedigree of those 10 data fields, and they're not really ready to do the results because, now this is where literacy comes in, they are illiterate, okay? AI and machine learning is not a goal, okay? It's a tool to get you somewhere. And some people have invested a lot in that. That's why I put it in the bad news thing. Digital transformation is not a business strategy as it's being used. I see too much, it's a club to beat people over the head with it, all right? Some of your data is strategic and some of it is really, really important. And if you don't play in treating your data the right way, if you don't have data governance, if you don't have it, you're going to lose in the marketplace. And that's something we need, the news we need to deliver. Okay, and this is all more about people. This is more about soft issues and technology. I've seen a couple of companies do really wonderful things with some half decent, sophisticated BI stuff and some real dedicated people working through the weekends, okay? Yes, I had a Mr. Executive, this is an abstract intrusion. All right, I had a very senior person in a government organization say, John, I get this stuff, but this is an abstract intrusion. All I see is the abstract conversation, the abstractions of data, and I just need to get a report out, okay? And this is an intrusion to me. And I went, yeah, but you know what? At one time in the 1950s, human resources was an intrusion. In the 1980s, lean and reengineering was an intrusion. And there's all these concepts over the years that we've had to adopt and get smarter about, even when you didn't want to. And guess what? Data is something that the CEO, the leadership team, and the board of directors need to learn more than they know now. And that's one of the areas where I've changed my talk, because 20 years ago, I would say we need to get the engagement and then let us go do our jobs. And now I don't think so. We have to quit selling data value with this blue curve that you're seeing on this screen here. The expectations will go like that. The reality, of course, is a mirror image or worse of that. And the real target you need to be realistic is, let's go up in steps. We're nice, slow, and steady here. All right. You know, I got so many folks that say, just give someone the raw data, they will work miracles. We know that really doesn't work. All data sets that make good value things have to be curated. So the data value thing is something we've got to work on too. Let's get this right. These are business capabilities, all right? You've got a mandatory capability on data governance, all right? And these are things that need to be done. And you've got data management, and these are things that you do. Apologies for the build on that being backwards, all right? Data governance is now a mandatory business capability, not a technology capability, business capability. Why? Because in all of human history, no complicated system, financial systems, medical systems, plumbing systems, electrical systems, mechanical systems, survive and operate without oversight, standardization, and governance. All right. And a modern, complicated enterprise is no different. The way we are doing data, because data is anthropological now. Okay. So now we also have a lot of folks kicking around, like if you read the DMBOK, which is the data management body of knowledge, they'll say that data governance is part of data management. I will say this, within the data profession, we have a semantical problem, okay? I know enough to read it, and if I have a client say we're following the DMBOK, okay, I'll follow the DMBOK. But we need to advertise that we have two separate sides of the same coin here, and those sides need to be expressed at the same time. I'm not saying you need a separate body of people for governance and a separate body of people doing data management, which would include MDM, quality, BI, and stuff like that. All right. What I'm saying is you need to have an awareness that all complicated systems must have controls and checks and balances, and it is no longer an option. We need to quit selling data governance. Oh, John, how do I sell data governance? No, you've got to look someone in the face and say, this has to be this way because it's a mandatory control. If not, we don't know what the results are going to be coming out the other end of this other stuff. Right? And we need to push back as an industry because there's still too much of that going on. This visual is one of the most important visuals I've ever done, and I saw it on a LinkedIn thread a few weeks ago that someone had dug it out of a presentation I'd done or out of my book or something like that. Governance is one side, management is the other. Oversight, execution, separation of duties, business management 101, folks. All your principles and your standards are on one side, the execution and the proper is on the other. Your data supply chain and the people putting the hands on are at the bottom of this structure. All right. It's not an organization chart. This is an operating model. Okay. So what needs to be done? So now I've told why we need to have all this kind of stuff and why we need it, because we need checks and balances. Right? We need an operating model. We need to tell truthful things to leadership. We can't sugarcoat stuff anymore. Yeah, we want to stand up that MDM system, the master data management system, and it didn't go so well, and we were 200% over budget, and we only got one module in, but we learned a lot. Yeah, we learned a lot. Maybe we want to say we tanked because of these reasons, and here's what we all got to work together to fix. All right. So what do we need to do? First of all, data is an asset. That's more than a metaphor. I mentioned my friend Tom Redmond a little while ago. He has a book out called Data Driven, and in it he makes very clear what you should think about when you say data is an asset. Now, Doug Laney also talks about this stuff too, because he thinks data as an asset means it should be on a balance sheet. I agree with that. The road to getting there is fraught with difficulty, but intellectually, I think we're on the right track, okay? So what does that mean? All right, assets require care and feeding. You don't put your raw material out in the yard of the factory and just hope it doesn't rain, all right? You have to take care of it. We call that data quality, managing data debt, data provenance, data lineage, okay? These assets must be put to work. All assets must be put to work. The definition of an asset, actually there's about 9 definitions across various dictionaries and accounting bodies in the world right now. They all say have commonality in one area, and there's an expectation of value. Right? So if you're going to say, I'm going to do something with data, we got to do better with our data, there's an expectation of a return. I still hear far too many data people say it's really hard to do a dollar return on a data project. And I hear finance people say, well, you can't assign return on this abstraction type stuff. We've got to have, no, that is not true at all. Right? If you're doing something and using the data to do a marketing program or whatever, then the return on that marketing program also includes the return on the data. All right. Why aren't data people allowed to put what they do inside the calculation for justifying return on it? I mean, is it, so did you say the person that built the factory and charged us $10 million for the factory, then we can't measure the return on the the construction company that charged the money to build the factory? Come on, what's going on? I mean, assets have to be put to work. All right. Finally, assets require management frameworks that reflect their properties. So if someone is accountable for something, if something is going to happen and it could hurt the organization with the asset, then someone needs to be accountable to make sure that doesn't happen. We don't have enough people accountable in the data world. Or we say, well, the chief data officer is accountable for all the data, and that's just hooey. All right. It's, you know, if you say someone is a data owner, I don't like the word data owner, but when I hear it, I ask the executive, well, we have data owners. All right. You know, the head of sales is the owner of customer data. Okay, does that mean that they are accountable for the accuracy and the reduction of risk with your customer data? In other words, if you have a breach, if you have a loss of reputation, if you have a loss of market share, and it's tied to how you manage your customer data, do they lose their job? The answer is usually no. But that's what data as an asset really talks about. And then is this executive now willing to take that accountability? Normally you find out that they're hesitant when they find out what we're really talking about here. And that's not in the literacy classes, but that's in an acumen class, okay? We want you to change your thinking, all right? We used to talk about things like we're doing data governance because the organization doesn't have a good meaning of customer. Okay, we're doing data quality because customer balances are incorrect. All right. And we made those the objectives of our data projects. Those aren't objectives, those are requirements. Okay, what we used to call goals are now requirements. Now, what that means is your data teams need to know what is a goal. Well, it's got dollar signs on it, folks. Okay, or fewer cycles or quicker cycles. It's got a quantitative measurement on it. We have got to push that, all right? Expectations are much higher with data. I showed you the curve, all right? Data can't be delegated anymore. A CEO needs to be smart about something data. I'll show you that in a little bit here, all right? Your risks are higher around data now with the regulations, with reputation, with the fact that one tweet, one TikTok can trash a company, can trash an executive. All right, we have the fact that the world is becoming more astute about personal data, and there's lots of movements now for people to be able to charge for access to their data. We really need to consider the risks there. Roles are changing. Do you think the head of sales 20 years ago would have thought that they could lose their job over data quality? All right. Self-service is creating self-serving. Self-service BI, self-service reporting, self-service getting the data is a great thing. No disparagement at all. But without governance, it becomes data fiefdoms. Okay. And we have to be very careful about that. XLS is not an expertise for exploiting data. All right. Data debt is real. I talked about that earlier. Data quality is real. I talked about that earlier. Tools and technologies can distort what is truly needed. Vendor says this will help, buy my catalog. Vendor says this will help, buy my data quality tool. Well, they will help, but they're tools. You don't buy a tool till you know you need the tool. What I tell folks when I say, should we get our data catalog yet? I go, have you mastered putting what's going to go into your data catalog into a spreadsheet? Can you go out and take what you want to put into that catalog and enter it into the rows and columns of a spreadsheet? And if they go, no, we don't know what we're getting yet, and we don't know how we're going to use it, then I say, then don't buy the tool because you don't understand what you're buying yet. And the tool is a productivity boost. It's not a replacement for your intelligence. It's not a replacement for your acumen or your competency. All right. And I warn here on the bullets on the right to supplement this discussion. Your vendors, a lot of vendors want to be your business partner, but the way the industry works now, it's hard for them to be that way. All right. I'm not disparaging vendors, but take the mindset that they're not a business partner, even though that's what their marketing material says. Their job is to sell you stuff. All right. Your job is to buy it intelligently. All right. Society is a stakeholder in what we're doing. This is anthropological stuff. And that means even if you're inside the firewall of your organization and you're doing stuff with data, you are like in the Industrial Revolution when factories were learning to operate and deal with employees that didn't have a place to live that was healthy and didn't have healthy water. And then they were having people get sick and they had huge attrition in their workforces. Society becomes a stakeholder in what we're doing. And you know, if you are, whether you're a believer in free markets or not, whether you're a believer in Adam Smith's invisible hand or not, what you have to understand is nothing stays within the organization that is good and meaningful. It will work its way out. And you've got to have training in your organization for that. All right. Nobody is excused from this stuff. Leadership needs to know about data value and risk. They need to know the basic elements of their data supply chains of their organizations. They need to know what is the differences between data governance and data management. They need to know that your liability potential grows daily with your data, and they need to stop rewarding spreadsheet heroes because spreadsheet heroes just continuously make things worse. Now, business people need to know what we've just talked about, leadership plus data access stuff, data control stuff, and how to communicate with data, all right? Technology people need to know what the leaders know and the business people know, and then they need to know their technology stuff, standards, communication, data architecture, stuff like that. Then there's everybody else, whatever you need to tell them, all right? And that means partners and external parties and things like that, because data is anthropological. Literacy is not just what we call literacy now and are trying to do is too narrowly focused. We have got to expand that into more of an acumen or a competency thing because data is way, way bigger. So to take away from this, and I'll wrap up and then we can go into our Q&A, Robert. Your organization has an unofficial data strategy, even if you're trying to do an official one. And it's whatever you're doing now, okay? So you can start there and improve from there. All right. The one thing to remember is if you have no formal strategy, you're not measuring, your oversight is weak, which means you don't have real governance, which is required. All right. And it's an afterthought of your business strategy, and it really needs to be a chapter within your business strategy. Now, if you're going to do that, if you're going to do one, you need to align it to your organization's direction explicitly, proactively. I can do a whole class on that one. Okay. You have to have the oversight as well as the execution, all right? Oversight is governance, all right? If you do some alignment, then you've started data governance, even if your organization is such that, well, leadership hasn't bought into governance yet. Well, yeah, they have. As soon as you've aligned where you want to take the organization to a strategy, you've done governance. All right, because alignment, I think, is like the most important capability in the data governance universe, okay? Now, all this interplay of things is an abstraction. You're dealing with this abstract intrusion, all right? So you need additional understanding, which we call literacy now, but I'd like you to call acumen, all right? Data governance doesn't do data management, for example, all right? I've seen too many kickoff meetings where, and here's our team of data stewards, which are appointed before they started the program for some silly reason. Then here's John, who's going to be the data consultant and the data governance consultant. And some executive says, I'm so glad John is here because he's going to fix the data. And some of you chief data officers in this audience have heard that. Well, here's the CDO. They're going to fix the data. You have a literacy problem. You have an acumen problem at that point. All right. You've got to drive stuff, obviously, from the organization. You can't tell the CDO to just fix it. You can't tell the CDO that you're in charge of it. Okay, you need to have that strategy. As soon as you say strategy, as soon as you say governance, as soon as you say acumen, the other two always pop up. In the last 5 years, I have helped start scores of data governance programs. In the last 5 years, every single one of them has either had a data strategy that begat the data governance program, or the data governance program we got a month or two in and I've said, we have to support your informal strategy, and someone says, we really need a formal data strategy. Yes, you do. It always happens. These things are three legs of the same stool. So we have 1,000,000 points of life with our data world, all right? AI works, data quality works, BI works, MDM works. This stuff all works, but it's all manifested in points of light, which is great. But we didn't promise that, data folks. We promised enterprise wonderfulness. We need to temper that message. We need to say the points of light might lead to something enterprise. We need to do stuff locally, but we need to think globally in the enterprise, okay? Couple of things. No foundational work. Stop. Buy a glossary before you need it. Well, cause the budget, it's in the budget this year. Figure that out. Do something else with that, all right? Stop hiring data expertise. We're gonna hire our stewards. We're gonna hire our data governance team. You have a whole bunch of people who are responsible for oversight, total strangers. Now they're gonna come in and tell someone what to do. Really? What are you thinking, okay? Everything has an enterprise context, even if it's a local point of light, all right? A lot of people are big fans of Bob Siner's non-invasive stuff. It's a great way to roll this stuff out. It's a great way to formalize the informal, okay? But you've got to think about what this means to the whole shooting match over time, all right? You can't ignore that, right? A lot of you want to do maturity stuff. What's our maturity? And you have DCAM or IMM or something like that. Well, that's great, okay? But remember, if you're doing that, you already suspect that you're not where you need to be, all right? So be truthful with yourself, all right? Data governance is manifested in behaviors in addition to the maturity surveys look at capabilities, but there's also behaviors within those capabilities regardless of their maturity. Regular people just need to know how they're supposed to act tomorrow than what they act today, right? You should all learn some accounting so you understand what return on investment is, so you understand the net benefits and stuff. There's a book called Strategy Maps out of the Nolan and Norton folks that did Scorecard. Get that book. If you can put it in a spreadsheet and it's time consuming, you need a tool. If you don't know what you're going to put into a spreadsheet, probably don't need the tool yet, all right? We have a lot of stuff from the last 20 years. Peter Aiken introduced me. Peter's been a practitioner and an academic. I'm a practitioner. Peter will be the first to tell you I'm no academic, all right? But we have learned a lot, and we have a lot of stuff in the last 20 years. Please take advantage of that. Don't reinvent stuff all the time. Don't figure out a new way to do a policy. There's 15 policy templates on the internet. Just Google it, and the first page will give you 15 templates. I mean, things like that. Just, accelerate your stuff here, folks. And this stuff is hard. You need to look for relevant results. You need to look for wins, all right? And we need to be realistic with a lot of stuff. I'm going to turn it back over to our moderators for some questions here.
John, thank you so much for a great presentation. The first question that we have here, I want to make sure we dive in because we've got 11 minutes for specifically is that Amber is asking, would you restate your comment about why buying a data catalog to gain governance is silly? I certainly agree with your statement.
I did not say that.
Exactly.
I did not say that, Amber. What I said was, if you don't know what you're going to use it for, and you're getting it because someone said we really ought to get one, think twice, because you're going to spend a lot of money. And here's the reality, and I'll move on to the next question. Are you going to get a catalog in this modern age? Yes, you're going to get a catalog, all right? And are they cool products? They're getting cooler every day. They're really awesome, all right? But you're liable to buy the wrong one. You're liable to populate the one you bought the wrong way. You're liable to start, and you're liable to wake up one day with the boss, because I've got 2 clients now telling me this. We got the catalog, we've dropped X million dollars, and now someone says, are we getting a return on that? And we have nothing to tell them, right? So don't go out and buy it first and then figure out what to do with it. That's the part that's silly, okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Micah asks, what does it look like to have agreement by leaders? Should we expect our CEO and other execs to talk to us about it?
To talk
I think
about,
the word you used was engagement, wasn't it?
It's engagement. The word was engagement I used. Yes. Yeah. And what is, we always, like the question that, Peter, you get this, and you do conferences, and Robert, you get it when you're talking to your customers. All right. How do we get buy-in? You have buy-in. The fact that we're having these conversations fits the definition of the term buy-in. What you need, and it's a better word, and I'm going to be semantically OCD here, all right, is engagement. All right. It's like breakfast. Okay. Eggs are from chickens. Chickens are involved in breakfast. Pigs are committed. Okay. You need leadership's commitment, leaning forward, asking questions, understanding more, looking and demanding an ROI from you, not just fix this inconvenience. All right. Because those are the requirement things, not the goal things anymore. Because if you meet just those requirements of fixing the inconvenience, you don't have a sustainable program. You have a one-off fix. And 30 years of being in data, all I see most of the time is one-off fixes. That's great. It's wonderful. Point of light. It's not delivering what we've promised. Next question.
Well, John, just to come back to that, the question from Mike was, engagement is great, but what would that look like? Or, when you engage data leaders and CEOs, what are they talking about? Are they talking about ROI of the data?
Yes, you're gonna talk about three things. Three things
Right.
you'd want to hear to say that my CEO has acumen. Number one, what's the return? What's the financial impact to this organization? What's the risk assessment to this organization? Not, are you going to fix that data quality problem? Number two, do you have oversight? How do you know this is going to be working? How do you know this is going to be measured? That's data management. Then three, how are you going to execute this? Okay, what is the operating model for improving the quality, getting the master data right, getting the AI model? How are you going to execute? Well, that's data management. And they should be asking those questions. They just should not say, go forth and do wonderfulness and then get back to me. Because that level of it, that's where there's a deficiency on leadership's part. They would not do that if it was lean. They would not do that if it was Six Sigma. They would not do that if there was a government auditor in the area. They would not do that if someone from the board asked a question about some big macro issue in society. Why do we have them do that with data when data is the biggest macro issue facing society right now?
And those are the 3 points for Mike to just kind of come back and say, maybe those are the topics that you set up your next meeting with, to say, before we go in this, let me tell you how this particular project will resolve these current areas. And I think there'll be a much more interesting discussion. So
you want them to put their elbows on the table and lean in, and that's the best metric I get when I'm out there in the field, is someone leaning in going, "Ooh, the light bulb just went on." Okay, next one.
Great on that. Actually, Amber has a second question. Is there a better a better word other than data owner? Our agency has adopted data trustee, but that's a little pomp too. So
no, there's nothing wrong with pomp. It's data owner. I hate that word because it tends to be, well, if I own it and I'm accountable, I want absolute total control over it, and I want to be a gatekeeper. The ownership word can lead to a disappointing result where somebody actually becomes more insular, less inclined to think in an enterprise way because they're accountable. So I would prefer to have, and the word steward's the same way. Well, steward doesn't mean anything. All right, it depends on your organization what it means. So I'd say I like words like trustee. I like words like custodian. I like words like ambassador. All right, I'm a data ambassador. I'm here to tell you about stuff, but you've got to get on it. Those words aren't too lofty to me. I'm a data logistics manager. All right, because it's a supply chain. Okay. I think some of those are good terms to use.
Excellent, thanks. Well, here's another question. This is from Robert. What would John's recommendation be for setting up an acumen strategy?
Well,
maybe he's playing on words. Maybe it's a literacy strategy. What are
yeah,
your thoughts?
exactly. Yeah, it's what a lot of organizations. I get one email a week. John, um, do you have any templates for a data literacy strategy or a data literacy curriculum? And then I'll say, well, we're going to ask you, or we're going to bid on. I'd like you to bid on a data literacy training thing, and we're asking company X, Y, and Z to do that too. And I go back and I look at X, Y, and Z, and I go, they're doing what I call the classical literacy, which is reading and writing and interpreting data. And I go, did you think about the rest of the supply chain? Because that's what I will teach on. All right, so it's very similar to data acumen. I will say this: in the very near future, in fact, I really can't say who, but in the very near future, a data acumen syllabus and curriculum will be released by a training entity that I work with on a regular basis, and we will be releasing a full spectrum curriculum that has literacy, but all the other 80% of the stuff you need to know as well.
And this leads us to another question directly. Again, thank you guys for submitting all of these. We still have time for a few more if anybody has any follow-ups or anything. How do you go about discovering that 80% of the supply chain that you got to?
Well, if your organization has a transactional operational system that books a client order and ships something to a client, that's part of your supply chain. Okay, the supply chain is all your application. It's your entire data landscape, all your applications, all your points of contact with external providers of data, whether it's a customer or a stakeholder of some sort. Okay, it's everything that anyone does to the data along the way, whether they read it, amend it, populate it, calculate it, whatever. Okay, so it's your entire application stack. It's your entire data landscape of all your files, all your databases, all your interfaces, because Lord knows organizations have more than they need interfaces, all right? All your data agreements, all of that part of your data supply chain. So, we tend to focus on a report, but it's everything.
I think the question too is also, well, how do you go about getting that? But we don't really have time to address it. I would just toss out the word data flow diagrams, or a really good technique that most people don't know how to use.
Here's what you Google data landscape or data inventory, because one of the big low-hanging fruit, and I don't mean this as a value add to the organization, but someplace that a data organization can start to work to get people busy while we're figuring other things out, is I often say, just go out there and draw your spaghetti chart, because all organizations have the application spaghetti chart, right? And I say, show me your spaghetti chart. Oh, we don't have one. Okay, you need your spaghetti chart. I want to know the legacy style applications. I want to know the new style applications. I want to know how they talk to each other, if they talk to each other. Okay, I want to know where these databases are, because you've got people, definitely have people that are saying, when I get access to this raw data, I can do wonderful things. And that data is in no way, shape, or form prepared. It must go through some curation of some sort. And what else is happening to that data along the way will influence that curation. And so it's all of that stuff. But look, start with inventory and landscape.
Super. Well, John, on that very passionate note, and thank you for all the years that you contributed of your life. Yes, yes. But contributed so much of your time to general education around this topic. It's been a wonderful webinar. Your contact information is up on the screen. He doesn't bite, everybody. So thank you all for participating, and we'll see you next month when we think we're going to be talking about AI and quality. So look forward to that with Courtney Abercrombie. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. And John, really, thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, John.
It's my pleasure. Everyone have a lovely week.
Stay safe. Bye.